Welcome to Blind Spots, a podcast where we're helping you fill the gap between what you want to do with your money and what you actually do. We are professional investors, writers, and financial planners helping you navigate the complexities of finance to optimize what you can control and cut out the rest. Join your host, Nick Shermans and Aaron Varghese, as we discuss the questions and nuances surrounding everyday money management. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Blind Spots. In this episode, we are going to be discussing the book Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And you don't have to have read the book to enjoy this podcast because I myself have not read the book, but Nick has. So Nick, why don't you give us just a quick synopsis, summary, and tell us what made you want to pick up this book?
A good friend of mine read this book and he said it changed the way he thought about saving and experiences in money. And the brief summary is it kind of flies in contrast to what we've been conditioned to know about retirement and saving, where so many gurus are out there saying that you should work, you should save, you should invest, and you should accumulate this nest egg for future years. And I think that's sound advice. I've certainly heard worse advice. Mr. Perkins basically says you should strike a balance between being financially prudent and also spending money on experiences. His whole premise is your life energy is all the hours you're alive to do something. And whenever you work, you spend a unit, you spend some of that life energy. And his premise is we work not to accumulate money, but to accumulate money with the goal of cashing that money in for life experiences. And let me use an extreme. Back to my original example, where people save money, they invest, they have this pot of money, and they become almost scared to spend it because they're motivated by fear. They're scared of running out of money. Maybe they're reading the news every day and think that we're gonna, like, the end of the world is coming, or whatever reason that you can think of. Mm-hmm. What ends up happening is time passes, and you simply have less time to enjoy the units of your hard work, your life energy, to convert those into experiences. The older you are, the less physical things that you can do, the number of experiences shrinks, and before you know it, life passes you by and you look back and you have a pot of money, but you're short on experiences.
Mm-hmm. There's a quote that was pulled, and I'll leave a summary of this book in the description, but there's a quote that this person pulled out and said, "When the end is near, we suddenly start thinking, what the hell am I doing? Why did I wait this long?" Until then, most of us go through life as if we have all of the time in the world. And I don't think that you can quite grasp what that feeling is like until you're in that space. But I think it goes to just the point of it's good to learn from people who have done things before you. So if someone is saying, don't wait until the end because you might have these regrets, that it might be time to start considering doing things different today. So let's talk about who this theory isn't for. So it's not for someone who is already a big spender, who maybe has a spending problem already. And it's not for people with no disposable income. So if you're only meeting your basic needs, having a roof over your head, food on the table, this probably isn't for you.
No, I think that's fair. And the premise of this is not to swing to one extreme or the other extreme. So we're not advocating you spend all your last dime or spend all of your money to cash in on experiences. It's simply pointing out that a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this, live our lives in autopilot where we follow those that came before us. And the whole playbook has been laid out. You work, you earn, you save, you invest. And at the end of your 30, 40-year career, you poke your head up and then you retire. And that's when you start. That's when you start to travel. That's when you start to live. That's when you start to do all these fun experiences with your spouse or your friends. And he's simply saying that that's fine. Do all those things, but accelerate your experiences. That trip that you were going to take when you turn 65 and you're going to go to Greece and retire, take that when you're 45. Mm-hmm. That pot of money that you're going to gift to your kids, don't wait till they're 55 or 60 years old. Don't wait till you're at the end of your life to give it away. Give it to them when they're 25, when they're struggling to make ends meet and they're starting a family and they want to buy a house.
Yeah, and it's all about balance. Like we said, it doesn't, like, I don't want to repeat what you just said, but it doesn't mean put yourself in a detrimental place by giving this gift. But if you're already planning on doing it at some point in the future, you know that you already have more than enough. There's nothing wrong with doing it now versus later. So let's talk about memory dividends, because that seems to be a big theme kind of throughout the book.
Yeah, and he talks. So a memory dividend is some experience that you have that was wonderful, a trip that you took, a place that you went, a place that you dined at. It can be something simple, like as a really good meal that you shared with a close friend. And he's basically saying, stacking up these experiences and moving through time, the memory of the experience grows more fond as you move through time. And just imagine like connecting with an old friend, an old college friend. Like I'm going to play golf with a group of college friends. A lot of our time is going to be spent going down memory lane and talking about simple things or stupid things that we did together. That's a memory dividend. And the thinking is, the more experiences that you create earlier in life, when you're on your deathbed or you're around those close to you, when the end is near, you can look back on those. And that's really what matters, creating those experiences, those memory dividends that you can relive over and over and over again. And as I said, the longer period of time that passes, the more fond those memories become, and the length of time in which you can enjoy them only grows through time.
I think I've already started to experience this. So my husband and I have been married for 3 years, and we've done a good amount of traveling just in the last couple of years. And I love iPhones because of their photo memories that they will pull up. And it's just so fun to see those photos that we took even just a few years ago, to think about where we were, what we were doing, what the environment was like, what that day was like, what the whole trip was like. And just to think about all of those memories kind of accumulating over your lifetime, to think and see those pictures 20 years from now, just kind of what that feeling will be like, is just kind of neat to think about.
Yeah. So there's a quote in the book: "The business of life is the acquisition of memories. In the end, that's all there is." And he's basically boiling it down to a very simple equation. We all have a fixed amount of life energy. Our time on this earth is temporary. We spend that energy working. We're working to earn money. That money's used to cash in experiences. And at the end of life, we're basically a summation of all the experiences that we've stacked up. That's really all that matters.
Yeah, and I don't think that anyone is going to be on their deathbed looking back and saying, I wish I had clocked in for a few more hours. I wish I would have worked harder in this area. I don't know, maybe.
Right.
But
I wish I would have ignored my kids more. I wish I would have been traveling more for work. It's like no one says that.
Yeah.
So at some point in our life arc, and it's probably different for everybody, money becomes less important. We're content. We've made our money. We've hit our peak apex of wealth. On the other side of that, what starts to matter more are experiences and family and friends, and spending our life energy in a way that makes us happy. In a good way to drive this point home, and I've used this example before, but I think it's really powerful. If someone offered you Warren Buffett's net worth with the caveat that you had to also take his age, I believe he's almost 90, most people, almost every person, would turn that down, because simply you would have less time to enjoy that money, and physically the things that you can do are limited. So it's an extreme way of making that point, that money at some point, it could be 85, it could be 65, it could be 45, becomes less important, and people should use their money, which they spent their life energy earning, and cashing that in on experiences. And for most people in general, given kind of the autopilot and mental shortcuts that we use in this country when we think about retiring, should do it earlier. Do everything that you want to do, but do it earlier.
So kind of in that same vein, from the summary, I kind of gathered this goes along the same lines, that the happiness that you receive from spending, say, $20 earlier in life becomes less and less later in life. So when I was 15 and I earned $20 at my fried chicken job, that was really exciting. Now it's easy to go to Starbucks and spend $20 on a couple of coffees, and it's like, kind of feels like nothing sometimes. So you receive less enjoyment from that money later in life, kind of depending on your age and career arc. But at what point I'll step back. The whole point of it was that not to short yourself on those experiences earlier in life, even on the small stuff. So you don't have to be a penny pincher in order to make sure that you hit all of your life goals. But at what point does the dollar amount become a big deal? Obviously, it's
If
different for everyone, but do you feel
yeah,
like there's a shortcut? Like $20 could be a lot to someone, it could be a little to someone. Is there like a percentage of net worth or something like that that you could think of?
so I don't know if I understand your question completely, but perhaps I do. What Bill Perkins says, the author of Die with Zero, he basically makes the case: if you die with anything but zero, you've squandered your life energy, because you could have used that money either to give it away to someone when they really needed it, or you
Mhm.
shortchanged yourself on experiences. So when he says die with zero, he's really trying to get people to die with zero, which I think is probably a little extreme, but the point is taken, that the way he thinks about it, let's say I die with 500,000, and I look back at the last 20 years of my life, and maybe I foregoed experiences for whatever reason. They cost too much. It wasn't the right time. He's basically saying, Nick, you've squandered $500,000 worth of experiences that you could have had. And in his book,
Mhm.
he actually uses the example when he turned 50, he spent an ungodly amount of money flying all of his personal friends and family to this remote island. I believe it
Mhm.
was in I believe it was in the Caribbean. And he spent like 25% of his investable assets, like
Wow.
250,000 at the time. And he was wrestling back and forth with this. Fast forward 10 years later, after he spent the money, he has these brilliant memories of his mom and dad smiling by the campfire. His friends are still talking about it every year since the party. And he's
Mhm.
like, it was the best money that I've ever spent. He said he struggled with it. He struggled with the decision. It felt really unnatural at the time, but it was the best memory dividend that he's ever created.
That's interesting, the thought of not only are you giving yourself kind of like self gratification, but it's for so many other people too in his situation.
Right.
I
And think
mean,
about your best experiences. It's just not you. It's with
yeah.
your spouse or your close friends or your family. So it's
Mhm.
sharing those experiences, creating those experiences through your life energy, earning money and cashing those in so you don't live with regret. And understanding that our time on this earth is fixed. Like tomorrow's not guaranteed. So
Mhm.
all that aligns with that premise is maximize your experiences today and don't wait.
Another thing that I wanted to touch on is this quote from the book that says, "We all get one ride on this roller coaster of life. Let's start thinking about how to make it the most exciting, exhilarating, and satisfying ride that it can be." And I think that there's this concept in life that a lot of people are always waiting for kind of the next big life event. Like I'm young, there's a lot of big things happening, kind of monumental life things. And it's really easy to constantly be looking forward to the next thing. There's something really special about making the mundane day to day life exciting and special too.
No, that's true, and that's actually a skill between a professional and an amateur, someone who's happy versus someone that's unhappy. You show up and do the work. You're sick, you don't feel like it. You can create magic out of the mundane and being content with the mundane, like going through the daily grind of life, getting satisfaction of that out of that. And the book I'm reading, another book I'm reading, talks about how we think about time and how many people can't slow down and live in the moment and just
Mhm.
appreciate what is and how amazing life actually is, and losing track of time and not being a slave to time, and realizing once you understand that life is fixed and it's temporary, that you can really appreciate the beauty of the moment. And he talks about his previous self would have gotten so mad about being in a being in a traffic jam. He
Mm.
would start pounding on the steering wheel and getting so frustrated. And then he had a close friend pass away. And this close friend, he would think about often. And when he got into a traffic jam, he would think to himself, what David wouldn't give to be sitting in a traffic jam right now?
Yeah.
And it just changes your perspective, that there's beauty just in being, just in existing, and how many people who have come before us and passed wouldn't give to have a daily frustration, to have the dishwasher go out, to get stuck in traffic, to get hit by, someone slamming into our bumper. It's like these are minor inconveniences, but when you put them in the right perspective, they're not really a big deal at all.
I was thinking about this a lot last night because I watched a movie called, it's new, it's Jake Gyllenhaal, it's like a military type movie. But anyways, they have all of these scenes from people who are boots on the ground at war in Afghanistan, and thinking about there's actually, like, it wasn't based on a true story, but there's actually people in real life who are out doing those types of things. Like, how lucky are we that this is where I get to come every day to work? It was just like one of those kind of introspective moments where you're
Yeah,
just really thankful for what you
sure.
have.
Well, I've gotten into World War II history and reading about
Hmm.
the struggles there. And one of the veterans was writing about that time, and someone asked him a question about as he looks back on the war and as he gets assimilated back at home, what's one thing that he would tell his common man or neighbor? And he said, having experienced the horrors of war, every night I would get down on my hands and knees and thank God that I was born in the USA. He's like, that's the overarching takeaway. Sure, we have our problems, but there's no greater country on earth to be born and living in right now. And that stuck with me. And I think, not to get weird or
Yeah.
go down a rabbit hole, but like, you read about all the ways people are triggered and offended today. And it's like, think about the struggles of someone fighting in World War II or just living in that time where you're 18 years old and you could be drafted to get dropped halfway around the world fighting a tyrant in the most brutal war the world has ever seen. It's like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. Like,
I mean,
when you think about it from that perspective, it almost makes it feel like silly. But all of that to say that there's so many things that you can complain about and whatever, but just day-to-day life and being alive is amazing.
100%.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to get your kind of opinion on that I was thinking about with this is that we talk a lot about social media and the negative effects of it, especially with consumerism and being exposed to new and different things. But to flip it around, because you have exposure to other things, I think it kind of gives you more exposure to the things that are possible. Like, growing up, we didn't talk about traveling a lot, especially traveling abroad, cultural experiences, things like that.
Hmm.
And that's something that through social media, I was like, wow, these things in the world actually exist. I want to go and experience it. So I was
Sure.
just kind of curious of your thoughts about that kind of side of things and how social media has potentially changed people's perspectives, but for the better, as we're kind of all talking about experiences and things to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And I think social media can be good if it's used with intention.
Hmm.
Like, I'm a big fan of Twitter. I think Twitter is great. I can follow some of the smartest investors on the planet and thought leaders on the planet, and they're giving me their hot takes, and they're doing it for free. Like, I can't believe that platform is free, and I can block out who I don't want to listen to. I can curate who I want to listen to, and there's just some really smart people sharing ideas. So that's been a big impact on me.
Hmm.
As far as the experiences go, I've really got into watching travel blogs. And there's a few folks that I follow that go off to interesting places. Like there's this one guy that my daughters and I actually watch him.
Hmm.
He goes to every former Soviet country and just wanders around.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
he goes to castles, he talks to people, he goes to the local cafes, and he speaks Russian. And
Okay.
he goes to these Soviet era bus stations and train stations and all these different museums and statues, and he just talks to people, and it's really cool to see how things have changed pre-World War II, post-World War II, um, how these countries have changed since the Soviet Union crumbled. And it's just a
Hmm.
really thought-provoking, interesting life this man leads, and he shares it with everyone for free on YouTube.
Right. That's pretty neat. What's his name? Do you remember?
Bald and Bankrupt.
Bald
He's
and Bankrupt. What a
Bald and
wonderful,
Bankrupt.
what a wonderful name.
He's an Englishman that lives in
Uh-huh.
Prague, and I'm pretty sure the Russian government banned him from going back into Russia and some of these countries because he basically broke into a former Soviet space station in Kazakhstan, and he
Oh my
wasn't supposed
gosh.
to be there. He broke in,
And filming it and
he
broadcasting
filmed
it to the
it.
world.
Yes, he shared it. Then he tried to enter a Soviet country, and they detained him. And I think he
Wow.
spent months in jail. But of course, his viewership just blew up because of it. But the man is
Wow.
very interesting, and it like recently it's come out that he's maybe not so savory of a character, but I'll
Hmm.
leave that up to interpretation. I don't know the facts, but his
Interesting.
videos are very interesting.
Huh. I have to check them out. Okay. What big takeaways, just to kind of wrap this up, did you personally have from reading this book? Did it change your thought pattern the way it did your friends?
I think it made me focus in on something that I was aware of, but maybe wasn't living it. Where like I'm into more experiences with my family, less into buying stuff. Like we're trying to purge a bunch of our stuff. In in the past, I've been kind of gun shy about booking trips with my family. Now I'm more open to it after reading books like this. Because what greater memory am I going to look back when my kids don't want to hang out with me anymore, which is coming when they're 13, 14, and 15, like being
Yeah.
seen with dad is not cool. I'm going to want to look back at the trip to Disneyland, the trip to San Diego, these family trips to Sun River and Bend. So I'm going to fully lean into that, not worry about the money so much. And I think Bill
Mhm.
has a really good quote that summarizes his feelings in the book. Quote, "In the end, the business of life is the acquisition of memories. So what are you waiting for?"
I love that. That's a great question to ask our clients too, is, what are you waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I need to read this book because it sounds awesome, very thought provoking. And we will leave a link to it in the description as well in case you are also interested in reading it. But as always, if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us at insight@pureportfolios.com, and we will see you in the next one.